It's time for Planet Green.
We have launched.
We've completely launched. We've started the show, and it is Planet Green Trees. We're about to embark 2 hours of medical marijuana and marijuana reform in Michigan.
Planet Green Trees. Attention, ladies and gentlemen. The Planet Green Trees show is underway with your host, attorney Michael Komorn.
Yeah, believe it, I was worse off.
Alrighty.
We have launched.
Welcome, everybody. You listen to Planet Green Trees, episode number 558. We're calling it Mephitic, which is the word of the day. For those that don't know, it refers to obnoxious smells.
Very noxious.
Allegedly, our friend Jamie Madrigal is going to be joining us from the Vent. Is that happening or not? Maybe.
No, I don't
Not
know.
happening. All right. I'm your host, Michael Komorn. You're listening to Planet Green Trees. Today's April the 14th, 2022. We got a great show planned. A lot of topics to go over.
A lot of topics.
A lot of funny people that are going to contribute to the conversation. Of the things we're going to talk about this topics of the week, so let me talk about what we're going to talk about. The Hazel Park leaders deny the 2-day music festival, marijuana festival planned for June. We're going to talk about that a little bit.
There will be no sparking in the park.
I understand they're looking for a new venue, but if you're looking for a festival, you've got Cannajam too in October of 2022,
which has already been scheduled with the city,
approved by the city and proven mark.
Yeah.
Another topic we may get into is Michigan introduces cannabis regulatory agency, or what's known as the CRA.
The cray or the cra?
Moving away from the marijuana regulatory agency. It should be noted that the current name of the State Bar of Michigan's law section regarding cannabis is called the Cannabis Law Section. It was changed from the Marijuana Law Section. This may be a copycat play. Topic 4. One of the entities in Michigan that seems to be dominant in a lot of cities and buying up a lot of entities. Lume loses a battle in the Michigan Village fight and was ruled against. We can talk about that a little bit. And on this list here that I'm reading from, Grand Rapids Police released a video of an officer shooting and killing Patrick Lyoya. I guess what you're going to talk about that maybe?
Yeah.
There's some other things we're going to talk about because of events that happen as the week goes on that we're unable to get onto the list. But before we get to any of these topics, let me introduce the personnel that are going to help contribute to the entertainment tonight. First, we have the Bunker Boys, including Tommy, Justin, and Dan, responsible for all the technology. So if it's working, good for you guys. If it's not, that's who we're blaming. Jim Powers is here, the founder of Michigan Parents for Compassion, and an ardent, outspoken advocate for ingestion of moldy and inflated THC
Not
cannabis.
True.
Please welcome Jim Powers.
It's not true.
Just kidding.
Good evening.
I'd only broken if it was tested by viewer.
No, Jimmy.
Yes, yeah. Good evening, everybody. It is good to be here on this lovely Thursday evening with all of you, and looking forward to the show.
My inside joke with Jim relates to a conversation we had last week when I was ranting a little bit about the testing procedures by Veritas Lab and some of the nefarious and identified problems that exist there, and we were debating whether or not that impacts the consumption of cannabis consumers. And Jim took the position that even if there's a lab that's part of the regulatory agency that's knowingly, fraudulently reporting cannabis is passing and inflating the THC, most people won't care.
Yep.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. My position was less about that, but more on the reality and the reality of that taking place and the trade-off of legalization that we obtained and having that as what legalization looked like was problematic. We should probably try to take a poll, don't you think?
I mean, we could. I don't think it'll make me change what I
Not
think.
you. I'm saying just curious what other people say. And again, even if the poll is totally supportive of Jim and I think Jamie, that people don't care. They're going to buy their cannabis. It's less than it's ever been before. They're going to take it home. They're going to use it. And if they hear that the place that they bought it from,
they're not going
to return it.
They're not.
I would say they care about the fact that the lab is an asshole, but they don't care so much that it's worth going through extra steps to like replace their cannabis or to bring it back or something like that.
And that's it.
And if they don't know, they're not going to care because
no, and even if they go back, I mean they will go back to the store that they went to the provisioning center, and when they do, they may make some snide comment about it to their bud tender and be like, hey, you really shouldn't test with those assholes. They're really fucking shit up. And that would be perfectly fair. But then they're going to go on and they're going to make their purchase and they're going to go home and they'll do it again.
It's kind of like the argument about the boycott of the bigger stores,
It's the same
even though
thing.
It's a just cause and attention should be drawn to it.
And I think and I think Jamie had mentioned this when it was going on. I mean, I think there was value to the messaging, and I think that in that regard, it probably was a valuable effort. But I don't think people, by and large, really changed their buying habits as a result.
We got to get to some other introductions, but if we're going to do a poll, I might frame it a little bit differently. I may say something like, is this state of affairs where we have nefarious lab testing, inflating THC, and passing cannabis and keeping other people out of the industry, is that what was intended by legalization? That's a different way to frame it. I bet we get different answers. All right, going to the Zoom room. We have
Lume.
Returning from an unexplained absence. We're going to have to get a note from your mom, Amanda. I don't know. There was no explanation, but Amanda Jocelyn has joined us. Thanks for being here, Amanda.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Yes, I've been absent, but here I am and looking forward to the show.
I feel like there's been a lot of news on the wire about Ohio cannabis and Florida cannabis for some reason. I don't know.
In fact, we are most likely going to have a guest on next week. She's the manager of the onboarding and hiring, training new employees and things like that. And they are the
Where in Florida?
Yep, the only family-based dispensary in Florida, because most of them are like multi-state operators and stuff. So these guys are kind of like working their way up, and they've got some pretty good flower and stuff. So unfortunately, her dad passed away. And so she's taken a few days, of course, to grieve with her family.
Sure. It's going to be interesting.
Next week.
I'm curious to speak with her because I'm always fascinated by why people get into this business, what the motivations are, and certainly like how the market's developing in Florida. Florida, Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong, is still exclusively medical. They have not passed any recreational laws, is that right?
That's correct.
And the process of getting your card is not like it is in other states. Is that right?
No, there's no telemedicine here. So there's an office visit required. It's an annual card, but you have to get your renewal every 7 months. And then they really are. There's no temporary card type of deal either. It just you have to wait in the mail. For 10 days it takes to get it, and then you're good for another 7 months or so. But
are there doctors?
There's no reciprocity there either, right?
Yeah.
What's that?
No reciprocity.
That's correct. Yeah.
They have a number of conditions that parallel the Michigan list. Are doctors easy to access? Are they allowing advertising, or at least letting their presence be known that that's part of their practice?
In certain areas, they're more open with it, I guess. But there are so many doctors. If you look at the list on the state's website, there are so many doctors that have their license or their, you have to go through training in order to recommend it for somebody, state mandated training. But there are so many doctors that are registered to do it, but they just don't really advertise it. And I guess what will happen is in the normal course of your day, if you bring somebody in for a flu shot and they need a cannabis card, you just recommend cannabis as well. So that's a lot of what I I've been seeing happening. But there are definitely a few big certification clinics that rule the industry, but it's all in person. And the physicians, there's a lot of them, and they're spread out. But it's easier for folks just to sometimes go to a clinic. But
they've done it the same way. It's a recommendation. There's a wide variety of conditions. The ultimate decision to be made is by the physician in terms of determining whether they qualify. There's no real distinctions.
No, there aren't any background checks or anything like that in regards to patient applications or, any type of interference with that. But it is totally the doctor's choice. The way that the conditions are outlined are a little bit different. It is the same, like for the most part, but the way that the doctor has to list it out is like, for instance, if I have anxiety, the doctor has to write it. There is no anxiety,
Right.
So the doctor has to write it in kind-like condition. So they have in many cases, they have the discretion to write it in there however they see fit, and get the patient qualified that way.
If if the condition doesn't fit, they can justify it by writing it. Is that what you're saying?
But I'm saying also that they have to include backup information, for instance, articles that support their decision. It's not just like, oh, okay, I say yes and send it on over to the state for approval.
If they're selected from a list that's not
correct.
Okay, but there is a list of other conditions that they don't have to provide articles for.
Yeah, but like PTSD is something that they may have to provide articles about, that it has been studied and it helps. The relationship is there and it's been established.
Do you know what the patient registry size is?
I do not know what the patient registry size is, but I can tell you that it's growing. That I can tell you.
Jim, what's the where does Florida rank in population for states?
I think they have like 20 million people. Let's find.
They got to be in the top 5 or 10, right?
They have quite a few people.
Okay, so Florida medical marijuana
21.48 million.
Right, and the population age, the majority of the population age is probably over 60, and probably there's a higher percentage of treatment for chronic pain and acute pain, right?
Right. And it says 2.61% of the population of Florida are medical marijuana patients, and looks like that works out to about 440,000.
Wow, that surpasses Michigan's.
Yes. By a lot.
Yeah, but they have twice as big of a population.
Right.
And they don't have recreational.
And they have a medical market, which is that in itself is, I mean, come on. That's why these places are able to stay afloat, and as far as the certifications and the doctors and all that kind of stuff, is because it's only a medical market. And the dispensaries, I don't know if they'd even be ready for it, to be honest with you, because if they open those floodgates, they just in February, last year in June, either way, very new, the option to smoke your cannabis, like flower. There was no flower. So what ended up happening, it's only vape and, concentrate products and edibles and whatnot. But they also had a low THC, which they still do, but a low THC. So some doctors would only give you like hemp, basically, CBD-ish, and then other times they would be able to write you the full recommendation. But yeah, it's
wow.
Something else.
It's like little baby steps. Jamie, let's introduce the other Zoomer. Jamie Lowell has joined us from a undisclosed location, but we know at that location there is certainly a record collection of some kind of vinyl.
And a 3D printer.
Jamie Lowell, thanks for being here. Mr. Responsible for everything.
Really is.
And let me, while I'm introducing you, let me say again, what a phenomenal hash bash. Jamie takes 100% credit for the success of the event. It was not led by the normal group. Someone had to step up, and Jamie did that and handled it like a boss. Jamie Lowell.
went down well, and yep, and I did it all by myself.
That's right.
So I do have some questions about the police scenario in Grand Rapids and about the Lume situation if we get to those.
Ooh. Well, let's get right to them. I mean, one of the things that I think is of interest is the market of cannabis in and of itself. Forget the testing and whether you like it and buy it or not. And I say the market, I mean it in the terms of the...
you really mean the drama.
The fluctuation of the so-called market to the point where it's in 180 degrees from where it was maybe a year ago, where there was expensive, growing and the selling of the cannabis from the growers was priced much higher. Prices at the stores are much higher, and there was less cannabis. And now we see the opposite of that, where the price has been reduced significantly. I don't think that a lone medical retail store can even operate anymore. Do you know of any that are, first of all, do you know of any medical stores that are not growers, but medical stores, retail, that are just medical and are staying open? Is that even a thing?
Yes.
Where?
Detroit.
House of Dank,
Dank?
Detroit.
They
Okay.
have like 8 places and 5 of them are all medical, and including.
And that'll be
Traverse City.
Won't that be, aren't they passing stuff right now? Or
Yeah, they
trying
did.
to
Well,
get the-
Yeah, but the retail store part of it still is probably going to be under challenge for a little bit, I would think. But we could talk about that. There's a connection to that from the Lume
Sure.
discussion.
We're talking about the Detroit ordinance. I'm just saying, I'm saying the market itself is evolving and developing. Call it good, better, otherwise. But the prices are, and this is something that effectuates the other markets that aren't regulated. And when the price at the retail stores is such that it's competitive with the other markets get screwy as well, right? I mean, that's one of the, and that happened rather fast. There seems to be a huge input of commercial cannabis into the marketplace.
Yep.
That has greatly reduced the price.
Yep.
And Jamie, in your connection and affiliation with the various retailers out there, what's your takeaway on this? Do you think have people moved to a model where you Botanical in particular, or the other affiliated, are they selling are the price points less than they've ever been? Is there more business? Does the reduction in price is good for the customer, but the bottom line for the business owner just means you're getting less.
I don't jump into all that, but there is a point at which the retailers are taking advantage of the situation, buying cannabis for pretty cheap. Yes, they are selling it for less, but they're still, I would guess, keeping a little bit of a margin.
Right.
More of the cultivators, I think, that are in trouble with the way the pricing is working out.
I would agree. And there was always that. They were always in the driver's seat. I felt like there's more space. But from the retail perspective, even, let's say, I don't know, take away, just call it a business. If they are buying it for a price point and, the margins are 100%, if I'm not mistaken, at retail places, right? That's what usually they're buying it at and flipping it for. So if they're selling it for 300 an ounce versus 150 an ounce,
50% margin.
but they're getting it for whatever, much less. I'm saying if the retailers were selling it for 400 an ounce, but now you can get an ounce of marijuana for 200 at a store, right? So that means that so they're selling it for less. They're still making the same markup because they're buying it. They're making 100% markup no matter what. So they're making money on the purchase, but it doesn't fill up the totality of dollars that they're bringing in, right? You're making more in a margin, but if you're only selling, 100 units versus 2,000 units, it's a big difference in the bottom line. And that's what I think that some of the retail stores that don't have huge volume are having a difficult time, right? If it's the quality, if they can go somewhere else and pay less, they will.
Yeah.
And if you can't turn it over and draw people in a greater volume, then you're subject to any truth to that, Jamie?
I think that sounds reasonable. I mean, again, I don't I know that that kind of stuff takes place. I can't say that that's what's happening or not happening for sure. I haven't really paid that much of attention to it directly.
Right. Okay, so should we talk about the Lume thing real quick here? Because I know there was some transition that I think I just plowed right through. Jamie, what was the connection here?
So the most recent story and something that brought up the Lume issue was a denial by a federal judge for Lume to be able to open in Pinckney Village and to support the local process that resulted in who got the license, because they limited it, they had to do like a weighted application process. They argued that in part because of the residency weight that it's invalid and discriminatory or whatever whatever those issues are for somebody, and the judge said no, it was fine. And I guess the connection is in Detroit, that's part of the issue for the retail store scenario. And
which is what?
Just wondered,
The same issue
You said the issue of the scoring system.
of the residency requirement.
Wait. So you're saying that the residency requirement came up in this Lume? Let me read the thing. So it's reported that Michigan-based Lume company, also known as Attitude Wellness LLC, has lost its battle against the tiny town of Pinckney, Michigan. Lume was annoyed that it didn't win the sole cannabis license for this little town and sued the town to find out why. Lume already owns 26 stores in the state of Michigan, so the fight for this little town's license was described by some in the state as a bullying move. Pinckney had originally...
Lume to be an asshole on the local level all around the state in different ways.
I have some comments about that in a second, which I will gladly contribute to my subjectivity and emotional feelings towards Lume. But maybe they'll be seen objectively. Pinckney had originally opted out of the program and then changed its minds. In Michigan, if a town chooses to limit its licenses, it has to create a standard for scoring and ranking the applicants. Pinckney received 3 applications for its single cannabis retailer license. The Means Project received a perfect score under the matrix, whereas QPS Michigan Holdings obtained 66 points and Lume had 65, coming in third. Lume lost points for not presenting the village with a clean energy plan and choosing not to operate its retail business in a vacant and distressed building. Neither Lume nor QPS Michigan Holdings received any residency points. Lume argued that the residency requirement was discriminatory, but it lost that argument. That's what you're saying, Jamie, because there's a residency requirement in Detroit.
Well, it would have been moot
Why?
anyway because they missed points
Elsewhere.
for other criteria. So do we know what the
Well, here you go. Let's just deal with
Well,
this.
it might be moot in scoring, but it still was, the concept being used was upheld by the judge.
Well, Lume argued that the favoring local merchants was an illegal public purpose, but the court decided the village would probably win this argument as well. Lume also complained that the town's desire to move into a vacant building had nothing to do with the state's cannabis law. However, the court said that local municipalities can make decisions like this if they want to. That's really interesting. I'll tell you this. The other litigation and this is really ironic because the other litigation around the state, and there's been plenty. I've been involved with some in Isabella County, and Lume is there. I'll talk about that in a second. There was a big battle in Traverse City, if anyone remembers this. There was all these plans for developments and whatnot, and Traverse City did a rubric
It was a fucking shit show.
competitive scoring. And there's 2 critical pieces of language. I'm going to paraphrase. One is that if you have a medical business, a rec ordinance can't prevent you from selling recreational cannabis out of that medical business. Now, that is clear as day, which would suggest if you have a medical, you should get a recreational. That has not been adopted. There's justifications why it may not apply, etc. The other language is that if you're going to have a competitive scoring system, the competitive scoring system must be related to the purpose and nature of the license, right? Traverse City's problem was that in their scoring system, one of the things that they scored you for is how much, it's jokingly, but it was something to the effect of, how much money did you invest in our blight? Did you buy any apartment complexes and fix them up and, make that part of the town better? Did you contribute any money to the ball field that we have? And we told you we need some money to.
But that's clearly, I mean, any
But-
reasonable person can look at that situation and say why that is inappropriate.
Well, the argument was by Lume that the residency requirement was discriminatory, but they lost it. And then they argued that favoring local merchant was illegal public purpose, but the court decided the village would probably win the argument as well. Lume complained that the town's desire to move to the vacant building, which is and use, require them. Lume complained of the town's desire to have them move into a vacant building, that it had nothing to do with the state's cannabis laws or how to run a license or with the purpose of the license.
Yeah.
However, the court said that local municipalities can make decisions like this if they want to, which would mean they can do whatever they want.
Well,
and if they want to make you pay money to the
No,
Yeah.
I don't think it goes that far, but I do think that in this case, what you have is, because when you talk about something like Traverse City about, how much money have you donated? Like, we're talking about something that's already happened. So there's already been a transaction that's taken place. Here, none of that's happened. So what the township or the municipality is in the position to do is use this weighting system to say, how, with this single license, can we bring the greatest amount of value to our municipality? And I think it would be quite appropriate to say that a part of that rubric would be, hey, if you're going to move into a dilapidated building or some other vacant property that we've been having trouble finding an owner for or whatnot, I don't see any reason why that would be inappropriate. That seems totally appropriate to me.
It does seem like a pretty good way it's a win-win, it seems, in many situations, because it would be like the city is getting somebody to fill that, eyesore, or to fix that eyesore, and then they get a chance to slide in. I was also thinking that being in Pinckney actually would be a pretty good spot, because Whitmore Lake has a couple of them now, and they're just always hopping, aren't they, Jamie?
I think so, yeah.
They're always very busy.
That's a good location right off 23.
Yeah.
Up there, yeah.
The judge decided that Lume faced no harm in not receiving the license. However, the town did, since the licensing process had been delayed due to the lawsuit. Plus, the winner, the Means Project, had spent $2.2 million on its plan to open its dispensary, and the delay had caused it to fall behind other markets.
Oh, boy.
The judge wrote, quote unquote, without a viable MRTMA claim, trying to be funny here, it's judgy, Lume's case goes up in smoke. He couldn't wait, he or she couldn't wait to get that in there. That's like...
just what we need, our judges to be showmen.
Yeah.
Give their little
could have been a woman.
taglines.
Witty little, yeah.
Could have been a woman. Oh, let's see. It could be a woman. What was odd about the whole complaint is that Lume is already fairly large. Like this comment here is like, you can't dominate. You're not allowed to be a pig. Fairly large, and the license is in a tiny town of just 2,500 people. However, Lume said that most of its stores average $400,000 annual revenue. What? I don't believe that. And even though the town is small, the witness stated the same sales were expected here. Lume began business in the fourth quarter of 2019 with 75 employees, and by the fourth quarter of 2021 had reached 1,000 employees. The company has said that revenue grew 2.6 times from 2020. The first full year of business in 2021 is on pace to at least double again next year. Lume was started by and still owned by Michigan natives. One of Lume's minority owners has moved out of state since. CEO, founder Dave Morrow was also the founder of Warrior Sports, lacrosse, and hockey gear. There's some Bell Tire. There's some Bell Tire family in there too.
Or something there.
Anyways,
South African hedge fund or something like that.
Well, you know what?
They've got like endless amounts of money.
Robert Barnes was the guy's name. Bell Tire.
right.
I thought he was affiliated with Lume.
You don't think they're going to appeal this?
There's a federal judge, wasn't it?
Yeah. What does that
They
mean?
take the Sixth Circuit of the.
Yeah. I think that's exactly what they're going to do.
Cincinnati. I don't know if they are going to or not, but that's where it would be, right?
Mm-hmm.
I will say that this ruling is contrary to the principles of the way that Lume argued the same thing in Traverse City. I'm telling you, they've done this in the past. Here's my thing with if anyone, you can judge this whether this is the right thing to do or not. And I've talked about this before with, I think, my clients on the, as I say, Isabella County and the, what is it? It's downtown Mount Pleasant, right? Mount Pleasant, city of Mount Pleasant. A lot of traffic, a lot of people in the community, maybe 10,000. There's casinos there. You know, it's a draw for vacations, I guess, resort draw. And the city opted in for medical, and they did a lottery, which is one of the ways they can do it.
Yep.
60 people applied, 3 people got the license. My client was lucky enough to get the license. They then went to the recreational, and they were going to allow 3 recreational licenses.
Yep.
There's 3 medical. They were given 3 recreational.
Yep.
They did a competitive scoring system, which focused primarily on what have you been doing as a business lately, if at all. That's one way we'll judge you. How soon could you get open and running for recreational? That's the way we'll judge you. There's some other factors like, clean energy but did you essentially, do you have a store ready to go open right now?
Right.
Lume didn't have a building. I think they purchased 2 properties and need to build a building. Nevertheless, they won 2 of the 3 licenses. So 2 of the medical licenses failed.
Yeah.
And this is where, so they do this at different places. And there's some other issues that came up where it seemed like they had been violating the local ordinance, and instead of them relinquishing the license that Lume had allegedly won, they decided to amend the ordinance so that Lume would remain as the holder of the 2 of the 3.
Uh-huh.
And nevertheless, we filed a lawsuit, fought about some stuff. It's now before the Court of Appeals. But in the meantime, one of the other things somebody could do is, what, Jim? What would be our next choice? If we're tied up in the court, what would be something else that might effectuate this problem of there being a cap now on only 3 rec licenses, and your medical license is going to remain medical unless something happens? What's your next play?
I mean, you could always try and replace the legislators inside of that municipality.
Okay, or run a ballot initiative. So they ran a ballot initiative, and the ballot initiative was for the purposes of taking the max 3 recreational to a total of 10. So all of the people that had applied would at least have an opportunity if they wanted to, capping that.
Yep.
And sure enough, Komorn Law helped in writing the language.
Yeah.
As did Greg Schmidt got involved. Shout out to Greg Schmidt. And master of ballot initiatives. And sure enough, they went out on a shoestring budget and got the requisite number of signatures. To the extent where they turned them in, they were checked, verified, and sure enough, the requisite number of signatures of registered voters was made. Yep. The clerk announced that she was going to place the issue onto the ballot.
Boom.
Which means the democratic process has worked for someone wanting to initiate a law, and the voters will decide.
Oh.
And out of nowhere, and represented by the same lawyers for Lume,
here comes a lawsuit.
An organization was formed called 3 is Enough.
3 is Enough.
3 is Enough is a...
give me a fucking break. 3 is Enough.
3 is Enough is a Lume brand represented by their counsel. And they said, we have enough. We have 3. 3 is enough here.
Yeah.
And they challenged the signature process and argued that the part of the statute which had been deemed unconstitutional should apply in this case. Deemed unconstitutional by the Attorney General, who wrote an opinion about this. So the arguments that their lawyers, 3 Enough's lawyers, were making, Lume's lawyers, was you must apply this unconstitutional part of it because it's still part of the statute.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, it's been deemed unconstitutional. Well, that's not controlling.
Yeah, I mean, like, what does that really mean?
Well, the point is that
unconstitutional.
An attorney general opinion on something is not binding except for the agencies, but it's really instructive for the court. So the trial court in Isabella. Now, understand that the battle was not between Komorn Law, who assisted and represented the petitioner, but it was the city clerk who was sued by 3 enough to take it off the ballot. So the city clerk was represented by the same city attorney that we sued and are fighting in the Court of Appeals. Mm-hmm. And they put up a decent fight at the trial court and actually won. The circuit court judge ruled in favor of the city that she should go ahead and do it. And then the Court of Appeals reversed, and then it was not fought on beyond that. Now, it turns out that the same unconstitutional language that was merely an opinion of the Attorney General was later deemed to be unconstitutional by the Supreme Court.
Oh.
But the city bailed on it, and the case died at that point.
That happens a lot.
Maybe they run another ballot initiative.
Maybe.
Somebody do.
Maybe. But we got to take a break. So there's that.
All right. I mean, do we exhaust the Lume thing? We didn't slander them.
We didn't slander anything. And I guess just so that we've got both sides of the argument, right? I think that, Lume, I mean, they're doing what you would expect any business to do, which is to defend their business interests. And on the flip side of that coin, Lume comes to town and stomps on your rights, you should, maybe call a lawyer and do something about it. So
just at a closing note, because I was reading that story we're talking about, I clicked Lume and I'm on their website. They advertised, Jamie, for indica and sativas. Is that accurate? Is that a way to?
Probably a lot of places still do. That's like market driven. It's like those who give a shit about what the THC percentage is, thinking that it's like stronger or potency or whatever, it doesn't really work like that. It's just part of how marketing still works.
They have some 28% THC and 0% CBD strains called Jenny Kush. Do you think that this was tested by Veritas? Yeah. All right. I think we're going to take a break. It's 8:40. You listen to Planet Green Trees, episode 558. We're calling it Mephitic. Mephitic.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
When you're charged with a crime, you need a real attorney. And here's
a bunch of fucking ads. Does anybody like
why. The police, the courts, the labs, the drug tests, probation, the judges, the jails, the prisons, and the entire system is just one big machine. They have one objective. Take your freedom, take your possessions, take your money, take your children, control your life, and destroy your future. You only get one chance to hire the right attorney. One that will stay in your corner. One that will fight for your rights. One that will fight for your freedom. Choose an attorney that's experienced in fighting the justice machine. Attorney Michael Komorn. Knockout victories one case at a time. Komorn Law. Google it. komornlaw.com.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org.
Good to see you, Mr. Mike. How's it going? We're here live on your Planet Green Trees, streaming live on the channel right now. We thought we'd get a couple words and see how you're doing.
Doing pretty good. I was a little panicked getting here because the traffic was terrible. A lot of jams, the football game going on as well.
Oh yeah.
And then I got here and I saw that it hadn't started yet, and I thought they were waiting for me.
Of course.
But it turns out they just have a power outage.
No green carpet, power outage.
And, I was disappointed. I thought that Jamie had made it so that he was waiting for me, actually. But turns out I was wrong. But it looks like a great event. And
real good turnout.
Of freedom out there. See the freedom out there?
Look at that.
Bunch of freedom. Little cannajam sign over there, October 8th. Cannajam.
Coming this fall. Everybody save that date.
Headliners over there. Headliner over there. Lathe.
All these beautiful humans here.
Someone's going to have to help me who it is, but the last World Series the Tigers went to?
84?
That's me. I'm like an 84 guy.
Okay.
They went later.
Oh, yes. 06 maybe, 04 or 06.
Right. And their leading, their top pitcher's name was...
Man.
It was 104 miles per hour, I guess. He's over there.
Really?
He's over there. The hat. What's his name?
Zumaya?
Yes. Zumaya.
Okay. Awesome.
104 mile per hour. You know what he's doing now? He's coaching Little League. That's what we have in common. I'm a Little League coach, too.
All right.
I hope he talks about how to intermingle cannabis into Little League coaching. That'd be interesting, wouldn't it?
Bringing in the CBD for health purposes, obviously.
I'm thinking more like to doctor the ball a little bit. You know, get a little
resin. Little resin in there.
Spin rate. It's all about spin rate.
It's all about that. You got to get the ratio. You want the drop on the curve or the changeup. What about this guy Mike here?
Michael Tui's got one of the most famous cases in the history of the state of Michigan.
Komorn had the honor to be able to represent for us.
I was honored. And it went like judges are control freaks, generally speaking. They like to control people. They put them on probation. They tell them you can't use your medical marijuana card.
Right.
The Michael Tui case said that's bullshit.
Okay.
And when you have your card, the court cannot hurt you if you use medical marijuana while you're on probation. So the response when the judge says you're ordered not to use medical marijuana while you're on probation, you give them the finger and hold your card up.
That's right.
And that's what the case represents. Despite that, we're still fighting legislation to try to undo it. It's that bad. There's actually legislation that's been introduced as like the Michael Tui legislation to undo that shit.
Nice. Yeah.
You know how it got there?
Clement was just telling me that he had a table full of prosecutors, like specifically saying, my case and Michael Tui, the court case, and that we really pissed off a lot of people with that one, Michael.
So much so that they had to come out of pocket. They didn't have money to pay for the budget of their courthouse, but they came out of pocket to get their lobbyists. Because every court needs a lobbyist, right? Yeah. They're not just there to interpret the law. They want to make law, go to the legislature, and introduce bills that are intended to fuck people.
That's right.
It's pretty disturbing, but that's the state we're in. What can you do?
It's amazing, humans. That guy's out here making big moves, fighting for everybody out there.
Michael Komorn changed my life.
That's what he says. Believe that. Changing lives out here, fighting for every human.
I own the Center for Compassion and Great Lakes Hemp Supplements in Traverse City. We started back in June of 2009. So I came home and I was on parole in 2008 when we passed this law. So getting this accomplishment of pass for those that are on bond and on probation and on parole has been a goal that I've been working on since I came home from prison in 2008.
That's amazing.
So to get this case to finally go through and set precedents and set so much precedents that they had to respond with legislative change to try to overrule what was a unanimous decision in our Court of Appeals. They need to leave it alone. They need to back off. So you need to call your representatives and tell them to vote no on House Bill 5512. It's really important that we don't let them reverse the change that we fought so hard for all these years.
That's right, man, because the wrong people are in charge on that end. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, man.
Picture with future state rep.
Charged with a crime, you need a real attorney, and here's just a few reasons why. The police, the courts, the labs, the drug tests, probation, the judges, the jails, the prisons, and the entire system is just one big machine. They have one objective: take your freedom, take your possessions, take your money, take your children, control your life, and destroy your future. You only get one chance to hire the right attorney. One that will stay in your corner. One that will fight for your rights. One that will fight for your freedom. Choose an attorney that's experienced in fighting the justice machine. Attorney Michael Komorn. Knockout victories one case at a time. Komorn Law. Google it. komornlaw.com.
Bill Schuette led the charge against medical marijuana, and even after the will of the voters was decided and the support was enormous, he still continued to fight against the will of the voters, keeping patients from the medicine that they need. So I think it's important that we all speak up on what we think about this initiative. But when the voters have their say, their will must stand.
I am Earl from G3 Cannabis Therapy Network, and you are watching Planet Green Trees, the original and #1 podcast in Michigan for all things cannabis and legal news.
Here's Michael Komorn with more Planet Green Trees.
Alrighty, we're back. Thanks for staying with us. This is Planet Green Trees, episode number 558, calling it Mephitic. All right. Amy Lola's here. Is Jeff Frazier going to join us? He meant, is Allie? I heard there's some rumors Allie's going to join us. Doesn't mean we have to talk about the law. Let's talk about this Hazel Park thing. Jamie, is that a topic, or do we have something else we're going to get into?
Well, I mean, that's fine. I don't know a lot of the details about it, although I feel bad for the people that
I know some
put
details.
so much into planning and then
Yeah.
cannot go through with the event now, at least not in Hazel Park.
Well, they had some people locally that weren't very happy about the prospect of this happening. And they voiced their opinions, as we've seen occur in other municipalities, that a vocal minority can get things done when they speak up. And the city council voted no, 3-1, I believe. 4-1? It was not close. Let me put it that way.
If you look at the location they were putting it in, it was a park literally in the middle of a neighborhood.
Right, and that's what people were citing.
And I don't know if I'd have been happy about it in my neighborhood. I mean, I like to go to bed early and stuff, and I don't know. And it would. There was no parking, and I don't know. I saw issues with the location, just in that regard.
Oh, there you
Noise and parking, I think, would have been an issue for those neighbors. That's probably why they voted the way they did.
Yeah.
So the permit request is for a 2-day music festival in Hazel Park where people could also legally use marijuana, and it's been denied.
Spark in the Park.
Spark in the Park Music Festival is scheduled for June 18th and the 19th at Green Acres Park. The Hazel Park City Council voted
It's the place to be.
against the permit 4-1, citing public safety concerns as the proposed location is in the middle of a residential neighborhood.
There you go.
Councilmember Luke Londo, the only friend, was the only member to vote in favor of the proposal.
Andy's still on council?
I don't think so.
And the other issue I saw after when I looked at the location, based on what our requirements were going to be from the state as far as public visibility from the outside in to the venue, I don't know how they would have taken care of that at that park. They would have had to hire somebody to bring in privacy fencing surround that park to keep it the visibility not to be seen, and that's a state licensing requirement. So I don't know how they would have got around that.
It's kind of interesting. it's interesting. We talked about this at one of we were talking about trying to do this at Hash Bash, the year that the COVID first came, and it was kind of, and I remember asking Andrew Briscoe this somewhere about, what direction can the state give about helping to define what in private meant when you're having a public event. You know what I mean? Like these two things kind of contradict. And I had a visual of what it was in my mind. And I think, a lot of this is driven by the location, right? Some locations you're going to have to construct something that keeps the visuals of all others that are not within the confines of that particular event not visible. That's because that's the point of it. It can't be in public. You can create a public event that's private from the. It's really not a public event in a lot of ways. It's private in the sense that only those that have been allowed in, which means they've been checked by their identifications, they have a ticket for access. That so it's not truly public. I mean, anyone could buy tickets, but not everyone may be given access to, right? So, I was going to say, Jim, I didn't cut your microphone off. I want you to talk, but I was going to say this.
There it is.
Here's what I'm saying. Before you jump in, I was going to say this. Listen, the bigger question really is, how did this come to be? Like, is this a shock that, like, how was it denied? Like, I don't know. My point is that the most, this gives a little, like, I think the takeaway is a couple things. Number one is that not every city, very few cities, in fact, have opted in, generally speaking, for medical or rec. It's only like 10, 15% in total.
No.
And of the ones that have opted in, not all of them have opted in for all the possible recreational licenses.
Right.
Royal Oak, for example, I think only is opted in for growing, processing, and retail. Or maybe just retail, but certainly not events. And there's very few cities that have opted in all the way, all over the place. Ypsilanti happens to be one, but I think, and it's strange because if the city is in favor of it, they've opted in for businesses, what would be their issue of people consuming it, right? They really have no complaint. And you know what? As we say in cannajam circles, the goal of some of these events, the goal of our event has always been to normalize the cannabis use one event at a time. Mm-hmm. The stigma associated with this and the conclusions of the neighbors and the community that this somehow was going to create a public safety event is an unacceptable proposition, right? I mean, it's not.
I don't know, because and I'm looking at it from a different perspective. Just the parking alone and the traffic, the vehicle traffic that would have been going around that sub for this event, any event, it could be any event, would be a traffic hazard.
That's a valid concern. I wouldn't want that I wouldn't want all that traffic by my house.
I'm just a resident wanting to get in and out during that weekend, and that's going to be a pain in the ass for me.
Let me ask you, here's a better way to look at it. Like, we know that the Riverside Park in Ypsilanti, if it wasn't putting on Cannajam, it'd put on some other event like Beer Fest or Jazz Festival. So that park
events every weekend at that
it's happened in the past. And the idea that they would not, or they would preclude cannabis events when they're doing these other ones would be unexcusable, right? But is the city of Hazel Park having events there? Otherwise, they might be having, but the type of, because
we'll have to check in. We'll have to check in over the summer and see what's going on over there.
Well, figure it out. Look it up. It's called.
We will.
Look it up now. I'm curious because this is kind of important for their.
We will.
Their desire to.
I will say, I mean, not all the residents are supportive. I know.
Where's
that,
Jamie?
When we were at Cannajam, even we had several folks that came by that were very unhappy that we were there.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Well, and the Ypsilanti residents, they like to use that park and run their dogs through it or ride their bike around or whatever they do. And every weekend they probably can't because of some event going on there.
Side.
Yeah. Well, they should call the city. We had a permit.
Right. That's their
the
issue
whole
to
other
take
side
up
of the park. Frog Island, if they just literally cross the street, have a whole area to walk their dogs, which isn't the point, but you know, I guess.
Yeah. We told them they could walk their dogs if they bought a ticket.
Yeah,
So,
that's a good trade-off.
but they couldn't bring the dog in.
Unless it was a service animal.
That's right. That's right. Sorry.
Too many dogs.
I don't make the rules.
Too many dogs getting poisoned with cannabis.
That's right. We don't want any dogs to fall ill. So.
Oh my gosh, my little dog, she got into some last week and she was just totally, it's been a while, you know, and she just got sick and everything, puked. She had a pretty good sleep that night.
No tolerance, huh? No tolerance.
No, she's a lightweight. She's a lightweight. I've been, you know, keeping it from her.
Yeah.
I don't share with her.
Yeah. It is going to be a great show this year at Cannajam. Speaking of cannabis related events, I know we had a impromptu working session right before the show talking about some hot items. So looking forward to that. Yeah, it's going to be great.
Lathe is going to wail.
By the way, I'm on the Hazel Park website. There's an announcement that says the City of Hazel Park is accepting applications for processing, grow, cultivation, secure transport, safety compliance, and recreational marijuana facilities until 3 p.m. on 4/14/2022.
Yeah.
Today's 4/14.
Yep.
If you didn't know, now you know. I don't know that, I think I saw something, I'm trying to confirm this, whether or not they use the park, Green Acres Park, for other types of events and gatherings. It seemed like there may be an art show there. I saw some references to that.
Maybe a little art.
But
maybe some crafts.
Probably some weekend baseball going on over there.
It is a health and fitness park. They encourage you to come out and run around. You walk through, take you a couple hours to get through it.
Yeah.
But I don't know that, here we go, parks. Dog park. No, that's not it. But, I mean, I think, Steve, I get your point of the disruption of it. But if they are having beer fest there and, you know, some other...
But are they? I mean...
I don't know. I'm trying to find that out. I'm doing the search, and we should have a guy that just looks up online real quick for us when the topic comes up. We, low budget.
Very low.
Anyways, so I was trying to figure that. So I don't know. That would be wrong because it would seem as if first of all, let's be honest. If they got what's going to happen? Are people gonna, we proclaim there's at events like this where there's cannabis only. In order to get a license here, the state's going to say no liquor. You've reduced half the possibility of something going wrong.
That's not how these people see it, though.
I'm saying to you, there is, I think it was. It's an interesting, what happened here? Well, they thought they announced they were going to get approval from the city because the city's opted in for all these other businesses and they're advertising, come get your licenses, we're giving them out here. So, of course, they would be in favor of the use of it there. They're contributing to all of its use all over the place.
And they have been even before the licensing schemes went into effect. Hazel Park has always been very progressive in this area. And so I think to Steve's point, it sounds like there may be some valid concerns about an event that's going to be attracting thousands of people into the middle of a residential neighborhood. I don't know. I don't know all the facts.
If we knew that on other days, there's a lot of space there to do a lot of stuff. Like there's a baseball field there. If there's a...
I get it.
But I'm saying...
And right, wrong, or indifferent, people are going to be more tolerant to a youth baseball league having games and, ending up.
There's areas that you could probably pull into the park. You could probably pull into there and they could probably carve out some parking spots. You know what I mean? It's a huge park, right? It's
maybe, but
2-3 square miles, Steve.
Look at that venue versus the venue in Ypsilanti at Riverside Park. It's just different. Like there's,
you know what? They don't have great parking there.
I know a better location for them to do it in Hazel Park. I don't even know if I should.
Yeah, the Riverside.
There is a good location in Hazel Park that they could probably do it.
Yeah,
successful. I know exactly where that's at. If somebody wants to pay me some money.
Steve will consult to you for a nominal fee. Nominal, very nominal. Just call Komorn Law.
All right, what else we got on the topics here? Did we cover that one enough?
I think so.
What about, Jamie, what did you want to say about the Grand Rapids police released video of officer shooting killing? Are we going to watch that? I hope.
No, let's not.
I have to watch it. Well, I mean, whatever you want to say about it, one of the things that I've noticed is there's this, and it happened in this case where the police officer is, you know, just chooses to engage in the first place, which I guess if we're talking about it is an issue. But and then, like, you know, gets on, hey, you know, quit going for my taser or whatever. It just seems like that's just such a common thing. Like, is it? And then later on, we find out that that really wasn't a big part of the situation. That the cop was just yelling that kind of shit out, like, just quit trying to grab for my gun or quit trying to grab for my taser or something like that. And it's happened before with the Grand Rapids Police not too long ago, actually. Something very similar. It just seems like there's a, you know.
First of all, it all started off with what I always say. They need to rethink this in law enforcement. This is the goddamn traffic enforcement.
Yep.
It starts off with a mere civil infraction violation that leads to somebody dying. I don't know if it's worth it.
Well, and even if it was a misdemeanor to have, like, incorrect plates.
Well, first of all, I mean, there's nothing in the traffic code really that should be a misdemeanor.
Well,
let's just go there.
No, but I mean, I think it's more than that. I think it's, and you know, I know Steve and I certainly have talked about this on more than one occasion, that this idea that it's okay for a police officer to escalate a situation because a suspect doesn't do what they order them to do is ridiculous. In this case, I saw the body cam video, and to me, what came across to me, and again, I wasn't there, right, wrong, or indifferent, but you had a suspect that was clearly having trouble understanding what the officer was saying to him. Like, it was clear to me that he may not understand or comprehend English as well as the officer did. And it was clear to the officer, too, because the officer asked him if he spoke English. So you had that. So immediately the officer should be, okay, there may be a problem here. And then from there on forward, all you saw from this suspect were maneuvers that were defensive in nature, like the grabbing of the taser. That was after he shot him with the taser. And again, if you have a suspect that doesn't understand what's going on and isn't from this country and maybe hasn't interacted with the police, like, you would I say all of that to say, what would the harm have been if, when this suspect tried to run from this police officer and the car is sitting right here with the bad tags on it and his buddy's sitting in the passenger seat, what would be the harm with the officer just allowing him to run?
Nothing, because you know what? You can either mail him a ticket or submit for a warrant request. You probably got plenty of ID on this guy.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with that, but there's a, I was talking to a guy this weekend and about the police, and he said something that is, I was like, that makes a lot of sense. He said the police are trained to never lose.
Right.
And so that plays a huge psychological role on these police, that if they lose, they are going to go back to their department with their heads low and get made fun of by the other officers, maybe get in trouble because they failed to act in a certain way. And that's the mentality. They are not allowed to lose.
Yeah.
And that leads to bad shit happening sometimes. Because sometimes it's okay to to retreat, back off. Let them run.
They do it all the time in high-speed chases. Why do they do it? Because the officer may fucking die, or they may run over an innocent person. That's why.
Yeah. There's no harm in saying, whoa, let's hold up for a minute. Let him run. We got enough here to identify him and seek a warrant. Done.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, all starts off with the little traffic enforcement, and we used to in SWAT we would go by this matrix, and part of the matrix is where you don't want to force jeopardy on something that doesn't need it. And cops are out on the street forcing jeopardy all day long with these traffic stops. So let's rethink how to do traffic enforcement, maybe. Maybe that's a good way. I mean, let's rethink it, because a lot of bad shit happens on these traffic stops.
Let me say this. I had this conversation with someone yesterday, and they were, like, it was, they weren't a lawyer. They gave me their perspective of things, and they give a lot of thought to it. And it was about the concepts of criminal justice reform, about the statistical data that currently exists that reflects that the last 2 years, we've seen an increase in crime at a point that we haven't seen since like 1970. Okay? And, or beyond that. And there's a lot of reasons that may have caused that. We just went through a pandemic. People were locked up. There was policing. They were pulling back the policing. More stuff's going on. Some of the arguments being made are that, the concept of criminal justice reform or whatever's being used right now is resulting in people being arrested, not having to post cash bonds, going out and committing other crimes. You've heard that, right? You've heard that, certain states that have been leading the way in criminal justice reform are seeing increase in crime. It's San Francisco, for example. I don't think that they are charging people with the crime of breaking into cars anymore. Like, I think that it's given that it may even be a misdemeanor or something like that. You know what I mean? And the shoplifting. There's a bunch of and you saw there was like some of this stuff going on.
But so that's where the system's going wrong. They're not prosecuting actual crimes with victims. But yet we're still hot and heavy on this fucking war on drugs.
Right. There's a lot of things.
So what's wrong here? What is wrong?
Here was the only so I'm just playing devil's advocate this argument because it kind of gets into this concepts of the policing and shootings and the police involvement in our culture and how much need for it. Is there a threat? Is not a threat? But because that whole perception of whatever that may be to the person I'm talking to in this imaginary conversation I'm having, but it was real, is they may look at this completely differently. And I'm not saying, and I'm not even talking specifically about the video, but the arguments that are being made, these are not my words, I'm just kind of posting them out there, is that you've got the statistics speak for themselves. Criminal justice that's the model that we're using right now. It doesn't work because crime is up, right? And nobody cares about your social agenda because the stats matter. The ends justify the means. Go back to that. Now, I said this. I said, listen, that's like dystopian. It's like you are giving up on humanity because that program that you're talking about, if we stay on the path, you're going to have more and more people born into environments that are destined to produce jail out of them. You're not, because what we're doing now is we're acknowledging that our systems don't work, locking people up for nonviolent crimes, right? Keeping felonies on the record so they're precluded from getting into the workforce. We should think about these things differently, right? But the reform that is being imposed shouldn't be the ideas that people can loot and burn down places just because, and we're not going to, right?
Yeah,
take down cities.
Crimes with victims.
We're not going to do that, or shop. The idea would be we're going to look at this differently, and I think like it's a miss on what they're doing. What they really need to do is focus on one. I'd say the issues that cause crime. They're not. They're like social issues, and nobody likes to address the social issues. Why is there so much crime? Why is the based on these statistics, the only answer? Let's go back to anti-reformists are locking people up, 3 strikes and you're out, kind of stuff. crime was down, then statistics. This is the argument. I'm just saying. What it means is that we got to be looking at it elsewhere. I mean, the reality is that the crimes that are charged or that occur are not from people who they're bad people. I'm not saying they're not bad people.
Of course there are.
And I say, and I'm saying that there may be a little bit of a downside before we actually get to a change, but the current system is not bringing about, a change. But you have classes of individuals in socioeconomic situations that crime arises out of that. They don't have food, they steal. They don't have an education, they do stupid stuff. They don't have the capabilities and capacity to make decisions because they are not civilized in the sense that they don't have shelter and food. You're dealing with an entire different personality type.
That's only one part of it.
It's one part of it. I think you have this other impact, which is the war on drugs created this to a certain degree.
Well,
right?
it goes even deeper than that, because what you have right now is you have an army of professional crime catchers. These people, and to Steve's point, they're out in mass on the roadways looking for people to commit offenses so that they can turn them into bigger offenses. And long gone are the days of Andy Griffith and the community policing model, where a police officer,
destroyed that.
Right, and I mean the best example I can say, and it's cliche because there's been 100 stories online about things like this, but you see the story about the police officer that pulls over the dad with the child in the back seat who doesn't have a child seat, and instead of writing a ticket or calling CPS or something, the police officer figures out a way to get this child a child seat because the father couldn't afford one. And it's that sort of mentality where let's try and help people, And if part of that is, hey, the bad people need to go to jail, I don't think anybody has any qualms with that. But when you're out looking to either become combative with people or to just seek out crime, you know what? Respond to calls for service. I mean,
all right, listen, let's do this.
I'm with you, Jim. I mean, let's respond to our calls for service. And you know what? Instead of saying, okay, no bail anymore, you know what? There should be bail for when you're committing crimes in which there's victims.
That's right.
I mean, let's simplify things.
Or basic bond concepts. But listen, let me say this. Allie McCormick's joining us. She's an attorney at Komorn Law, recently nominated as a up-and-coming star, woman advancing
super lawyer,
and
rising star.
Yes.
So Allie, the topic we're talking about, let me set the context, and I'm curious to know your opinion. And I don't think anyone's advocating. I'm not advocating this conversation. Is not about endorsing criminal activity. Okay.
I think it depends on the criminal activity.
I'm not going there. But I'm saying this from an intellectual and academic standpoint. We're looking at this because not everybody can really. I mean, I wanted to say to the guy in this argument, you're not a lawyer and you've never been to court. You never had to represent someone that you knew was innocent, and they're getting dragged into this thing, and they're going to get punished in the system that is not going to have any mercy for them. Yeah. And he might try.
I haven't.
No, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about somebody else. Okay, I'm saying I had this argument with someone that was taking the position that all this criminal justice reform, and I don't know what he meant, like, he meant things like reducing sentences and not punishing people, and probably the no cash bond anymore. And his point was that we are in an uptick over the last 2 years of more crime than America has seen in the last to the 90s, and not the 70s, the 90s, when they did the three strikes. Right, exactly. Bill. So his point is like that worked. Like we were good to go, and then all this reformist stuff. I mean, he was. Listen, I'm saying to you, he was not. He's saying this. This is what he's saying. His argument is the statistics speak.
They do not.
This is his statement, and people understand this to be the case. He is not looking at the moral atrocities that have taken place and who's getting locked up. He's saying the statistics work and the ends justify the means. I'm not agreeing with that. I'm not agreeing with that. Al, I'm going to let you. I'm going to pose this question. We have seen, as lawyers, the tragedy of what takes place in the system. We are aware of some of the reforms, such as expungements, moral character not interfering with occupational licenses, that there's the bond, no cash bond stuff. But but crime's on the way up. What do you think from a practitioner standpoint, or even, philosophically speaking, from what you know and have experienced, do we want to return to the non-reform days to prevent crime, or is there not a correlation of some kind between the uptick in crime and the reform movement? What's your thoughts on that?
I definitely agree with reform because, the one thing is you have to think about, it's not just the defendant that's in court and the one that's going to, prison. That's their whole family, their children, their wife, their mother, their father, their brothers, their sisters. It's everyone involved too. It's not just them. But also the thing is once they get out, they're just labeled as, as a criminal. And, there's nothing. No, I think they should have something to be able to fall back onto, whether it's, if while they're in jail or prison, if they can, go to school, get a degree, whatever helps them when they get out. I think that's the best thing. That's obviously, better for everyone. I don't understand why that's no longer really a huge option. Well, because it's not just them that's going to jail. It's like I said, it's their whole family, because they're losing that person, that family member.
Right. One of my responses to him is that, before the concept of reforming the criminal justice system existed, America locked up 25% of its citizens. Therein is a problem. We shouldn't be that country. There's something wrong there, right? America, the land of the free?
Well, yeah, I don't.
Who told you that's a liar? Know your enemy. Isn't that a fucking Rage Against the Machine?
It totally is.
All right.
Yeah, I think it is.
But the point is that that fact doesn't. So the cold-hearted statistician that has no concept of what needs to be reformed because they've never seen it, exonerations, 20 years after, conviction integrity unit, 20 years after, you can't get back those days, those lives. All this shit about the bite mark and hair follicle and footprint expertise, which the FBI created in the 70s. They're now exonerating people because DNA is proving it wasn't them. These are just the tragedy of the system, right? You could talk about some of the reforms since then. The 3 strikes you're out, no longer. The mandatory minimums on, over 50, over 225, over 650, gone. Mandatory minimums, not so much. Even at the federal system, they're giving much more discretion. Guidelines are gone, right? Now it's a range, and they got to justify it. They can substantially depart up or down. That's a lot of what's taking place, as opposed to before, someone got convicted of a crime. The judge was like, I can't do anything about this. I don't think you should go to prison for 10 years, but you got to go. And they get locked in, and that's it. So these are the things that have changed. But are we equating all this reform, which has happened for the last, it's happened in the last 5-10 years, Is that the reason for the uptick in crime? Nobody knows the answer to that. It's...
I don't know. I guess I have my own personal opinion on the uptick of crime, but
go ahead. That's it's just an opinion. We all know that, and there's no data to support it. But so, what's your thoughts?
My personal opinion on it's obviously no reflection on Komorn Law. It's just my personal opinion. It has to do with a lot has to do with the current economic situation that we're in with inflation, things like that. Everywhere is a little bit different than where we're currently at, Michigan, and I know, I feel like it's been a lot with inflation and with everything that's happened with COVID. I feel like that's my personal opinion why there's been a lot of uptick in crime as far as, thefts, robberies, things like that.
You're right. To ignore the reality that we just went through 2 years of an anomaly of how we live, shut down,
a whole 2 years of lockdown and
the person that doesn't have the, like the argument that was being made, I'm just to play devil's advocate because I don't believe this, but there's no time to try to fix the world. The statistics are showing that this is what's going on. We need to undo whatever brought us here or go back to reducing the crime. Now, I maintain that many of the crimes that are committed are because of shortcomings of the individual's environment, mental health, economic health, physical health, and educational health. All those things impact on this. And, poverty, just not good education. They all contribute to this, and this is a known reality. And to really address reform, you got to address those factors and how you change that, right? It doesn't make any sense to just, if you have no emotions and you're okay with the 25% of the population being locked up at all times and we're the home of the land of the free, then there's probably something wrong with you. If that's what we have to have in order to have a reduction in crime, you know what I mean? But his point is, like, I don't have time to be unsafe. I need it fixed now. But here's something that I threw out here for a second here. There are people that are evil, Steve. There are people that are bad. I think of this, like, the whole PPP loan, the protection for small businesses and whatever.
Yep.
They gave out like billions and billions of dollars. Okay, like 75% of it. Someone Google this. Where's our looker upper? This is an important stat. Huh? Now, what's the percentage of the total dollars given out that was found to be fraud? Jim, you got that? Okay.
I'm looking at it.
It's a large percentage. Jim's going to clarify it. What? I'm not looking for the quantifying. I'm looking for the percentage.
More than 15%.
15% of the billions of dollars. So you've got and I say this because this is a statistic that reflects the amount of fraud that was involved with this, government. So there's people inevitably that are going to take advantage of the system, right? And they're predatory in their way, because whoever that came from, arguably came out of someone else's mouth. Someone else is going to pay for that somewhere else down the line. They're stealing from.
Yeah, or it came out of my fucking pocket as a taxpayer.
Right. So what I'm saying is, there has to be, there are opportunistic people that will take advantage of social circumstances to their advantage without any care or concern. I watched the whole thing about a guy who was a cyber. Whatever. So what am I saying? He was like a predator, cyber predator. Hacker. And he was talking about all the ways and what the schemes are and shit like that. And he knows that you got to detach, there's people's lives that are being ripped apart, but it's part of the game and what they're doing, and they can't, so they exist out there in a very real way. And so I'm saying to you, like, the world that we live in is not something like, the plan of having no
it's a non-starter.
Criminal charges for retail fraud or breaking into cars is inviting bad people to break into cars that exist. You know what I mean? Like if there's 10 a year and all of a sudden it's not a crime anymore, you're inviting people to do it, because the reality is that probably if it's a crime, people will not do it, right? Isn't that at least, there's something about that, right?
Well, I think it's that and the fear that
that's
you
not
might
true.
get caught.
That's not true. I don't think people do things because they fear punishment. Because they don't do things because they fear punishment. I think if they're going to commit a crime, they're going to commit a crime. They think less about it. Maybe the type of crime.
Yeah, maybe.
But, Allie, what are your thoughts on that? We're thinking about, we know and hear of, and, if there's one example, there's 100 examples of people that have been abused in the system. But there are some people that, I don't know what the percentage is. What's that?
Dirty Dan says Allie lost power.
All right, fine.
Power down.
Well, let's get some opinions of some of the other esteemed colleagues and guests here, academically speaking. Amanda, do you have concerns with the rise in crime that an argument has been made for? And do you think that it's linked to the reform movement of criminal justice?
I think there's a lot of things going on. I think that some of it was when we were, I think that initially it was just because of the lockdown, simply said. And then now what's happening is people are finding that they can't afford to live anymore. And for whatever reason that might be. And so what happens is they're put into a situation, perhaps, where they feel like they have to do things to cut corners. I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of as to why crime is gone up. I also think that, you know, you were mentioning earlier about the crimes where, like, San Francisco, as an example, has they won't even come out if it's under $1,000 of theft or you know, whatever it happens to be. So people understand that, right? And so what do? They go $999 worth of stuff. So I'm going too far here. We're off track, but you know, I think that a lot of it has to come down to the COVID and having the lockdown and placing people in a position to where they're just, you know, they're kind of, it wiped out a lot of people. Let's just be honest.
True, all true. I want to offer some opinions of others who have researched this a little bit. Jamie, do you have a thought on that? First of all, other than what's being reported, I mean, does anyone feel like crime is on the rise?
Yeah.
Why?
I mean, I think it's multifaceted. It's very complex, and I mean,
cyber crimes.
Everything.
Okay. Well, they may not be talking about that.
No, I mean, cybercrime is through the fucking roof. And it's for the same reason. I mean, all the reasons that you cited are accurate, as are the ones that Amanda cited, as are the ones that Allie cited. But at the core of it, it's that people think in most, I shouldn't say all, but certainly most instances, that they're going to be able to do something. They're going to be able to enrich themselves, and they're not going to get caught. Certainly in cybercrime, that's usually what it is. And there was just a case of this ransomware group that was a bunch of teenagers. Several of them were in the UK operating out of their parents' houses, you know, extorting millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin from these organizations, these very well organizations in the United States. And all of a sudden, Interpol shows up at their fucking door. So that's why. But I mean, on the flip side, I mean, you can't have it both ways either, right? And we got to figure out what that balance is, because the de-escalation of the police is, at least in the beginning, probably not going to help that perspective, that people are going to be able to do certain things and get away with it. But I think if we allow the police to, as Steve has said, really focus on crimes that have a victim, that's where people are going to see value, man.
Just put it in perspective.
That's it. And they're going to be able to focus on those. And I mean, I don't give two shits if someone is getting a traffic ticket because they were going 4 miles an hour over the speed limit. But if, you know, someone hurts me or my family, I want the police to focus on that.
Yes. Let's get back to that. Crimes with victims.
And those are really the crimes
But then
we
the
want
police
to drop,
will argue
right?
with you that, well, we need to be able to enforce all this other stuff because that thwarts off any crimes happening to victims. Well, it doesn't.
So
here's some commentary from an article, and just see some of the thoughts interjected here. It's from New York. It had a 5% increase in crime, 5% increase in homicides. The experts broadly agree on three main reasons for the increase. First, it's the pandemic. As people know, the pandemic has placed everyone under critical pressure, but in particular, it has placed disproportionate pressure on poor communities of color, precisely where community gun violence concentrates. Second, the major cause is, in fact, these guns. We saw record sales of guns in 2020, continuing to 2022, and unfortunately, some recent ATF data shows that the quote-unquote time to crime, and the time to illegally purchase gun, needs to funnel through the gray and black markets into the hands of the criminals has shortened considerably. And we're seeing police alienated from communities and communities alienated from police. So we're seeing less proactive investigations from the police, right? Less solving the capers. So we're seeing less proactiveness, and we're seeing less cooperation in some of the impact. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think we're all just saying the same shit.
Okay, fine.
And I mean, at the end of the day, it all goes back to what are we really doing to fix the core root of the problem? And you were talking about that earlier, Michael. I mean, people people don't want to steal from others, and they wouldn't do it if I shouldn't say all, but most people aren't going to do that unless they're put in a position where they're between a rock and a hard place.
Goes back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
You know,
and when people people are hungry and they don't feel safe and secure and they don't have shelter, they're going to do what they got to do to get by.
You know what's problematic, and I can see this thing unfolding, like the moment in time to really address the broken system may be over. What do I mean by that? I mean that the people that are creating the narrative for what reform should be is turning into, you know, headline shock events that occur of those that are manipulating these reform movements. Like, you know, someone get out on bond and going and killing somebody. Mm-hmm. That's blaming the judge now, blaming the new law, you know, the you know, retail fraud crimes and what, I don't know.
I mean,
because I was going to say there is a better way to discuss reform. It's not being less diligent about requiring laws to be followed.
No.
It's addressing why there are persons that are violating the law. I mean, if you're gonna premise that these people shouldn't be called bad people, they should be given the benefit of the doubt, we should trust them out of the gate, is the wrong premise, because they're in a situation where they've breached at least the social contract that we all have amongst each other, right? I mean, it may be a false arrest, whatever, but it is dealing with stuff. Now, that doesn't mean that they do it intentionally. They may be doing it for reasons that we cannot even relate to. So we have to understand, how do we, there's such disparity. I mean, listen, it's not a social, you know, it's not a social studies or like a, you know, sociology, you know, only, and I'm not saying it's, you know, like give away stuff and let people, you know, benefit, but it addresses the focus of where we are is not in the right place, because it can't be either we accept 25% of our population, which is just going to grow, as a jail prison. You know, the prison system is a machine. It is a business, and if there's not some cutting off of it, it will thrive and lobby and create more laws and lock more people up, and the broken, you know, neighborhoods will create more. This is just going to be like
we got judges now lobbying the legislature to create laws that thwart case law that was initiated out of this office. Yeah. I mean, they're more concerned with who's using medical marijuana while they're on probation or bond than they are with these criminals who are out there victimizing other people.
Well, it's that, and they're not willing to address the cause. And we all know this is on purpose. They're addressing the symptom.
They'll tell you that the cause is marijuana.
Well, no, in some cases they will, but we know what the causes of these things are. And when you lock somebody up, especially for a misdemeanor crime in district court, and they come out and they're on probation, what types of services are we giving these people? What type of hand up are we giving these people to help them be successful?
It's good luck getting a job after they fuck you.
Yeah, and you better walk the fucking line, or else your probation officer is going to throw your happy ass back in jail.
For misdemeanors.
Right. So, yeah.
Here's a Pew Research study. What we know about the increase in U.S. murders in 2020. U.S. murder rate rose 30% between 2019 and 2020, the largest single-year increase in more than a century, according to data published this month, which was October of 2021, by the Center for Disease Control. The findings align with the separate tabulation of the nation's murder rate published by the FBI. The CDC, okay, so here are the takeaways. The year-over-year increase in U.S. murder rate in 2020 was the largest since at least 1905, and possibly ever. Last year's increased murder rate may even exceeded the measures in 1905, according to blah, 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 blah. All right, so here you go. Number two, most states saw their murder rates go up between 2019 and 2020. Michigan's listed here. They had a plus 31 to 45% increase. All right, so we got that. Firearms were involved in 77% of the murders for which data was available in 2020, up from 73%. So that's not 77 sounds terrible, but 73 is not good, right? The percentage of murders that were solved, known as clearance rate, declined from 61 to 54. Now that correlates with the other opinion, which is that there's such a disconnect now in the communities where this activity is happening that there's less incentive the officers to follow up and do, and they're not getting cooperation from the community.
They're too busy fucking around with missing tabs on plates.
Yep, that's the problem.
Well,
that's the problem. So, well, everybody's feeling sorry for the police these days, and we got to go pro police. Get off the fucking traffic enforcement, for fuck's sakes, and let's get back to some policing of some crime with victims.
Listen,
go back to that every time.
That may be an answer in the more macro, which is really what I was trying to get to. But in asking the question, what is the potential? What is one of the reasons why there's more crime, or what is it attributable to? And some of the things that were pointed out are there's even more distrust than ever before. You know, if we're going to talk about the evolution of some things, like out there in the streets, you've got the George Floyd killing, the riots all over the country, people, you know, taking positions, very divisive and whatnot. And it was the police against that, right? It was those two things. And, you know, there was a chance of defund the police. Well, this is going to create, right? If you're going to tell a police officer, we're going to defund you, like, what do they want to do? They want to go pull that car over with get shot and a felony warrant, or so, you know, or what's their incentive to go and track down the other witness who's, you know, involved with, what the fentanyl, you know, the fentanyl, you know, they want to get near it, you know, whatever. There's thousands of reasons not to track it down, right? If it's not, they hate us anyways, right? We can't get them to cooperate. They won't even return, whatever. But I mean, that's clearly a interaction that has occurred, does occur. It's been, you know, but the increase in this police against everybody else, and I'm just saying that's just a reality of what took place. I mean, that's what's been going on over the last couple years as reflected in this. And, you know, it may still exist because a lot of people will say that what's changed? They didn't defund the police.
Right.
We need to go through some criminal justice reform, right? But the relations between the police and the community is worse than ever. That's fair, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Because the divisiveness politically on these topics just, you know, it became a more divisive political issue here. Like there's more support for reflecting on it and creating some reform, looking at it differently. The messaging of defund the police just doesn't make, you know, it's a wrong message. There's things you can look at and how to.
And it was an extremist campaign, right. And I think most people realize that.
But it got nowhere, right? But it created this. Now, the divisiveness between the police and the people that they police, where a majority of their work and, you know, and disproportionate efforts at times maybe, is already divisive. You know, like they're not, it's not like, oh, hey, Mr. Police Officer, come take a complaint here. And, you know, that is not how it is. So if now they're investigating more crimes and more shootings, they're not solving as many because you have even more divisiveness. And that's just reflecting the stats. It's an easy one. And I think that also has a lot to do with why there may be more crime. If there's fewer police officers around, when it come around, they're not coming, you know, doing their normal shit because they don't care and they think they're going to get defunded, or they're fuck it, we'll just, you know, we're not getting that shit. You know, I don't think that's taking place, but
it's not going to help.
But it's certainly going to create an environment where people are going to take advantage of it, right?
Yeah.
And that's the real. So those are the things that I think, and just out of the gate, you know, you know what? Because these are legitimate dynamics that have evolved over the last couple of years. You know, you have these real significant, nationally historical moments that I wasn't, when I think about it, there was a lot of this. Like the police were really trying to align themselves. They had a really difficult position to be in. All the spotlight was on the cops that they all do this. They're all fucking George Floyd. You know what I'm saying? Like that happens. They had to align themselves and call the other guy out. And, and it's, it doesn't cure the problem because a lot of times, they didn't have it on video that may not have happened. Maybe in a different story, it would have been a much more, you know what I mean? As we saw with the guy that was shot in Georgia. Remember the guy that was shot in Georgia? He reported that he was attacked and he shot and there was someone had a video of the guy running away from him. What was that guy's name?
I don't remember, but I remember the video.
South Carolina thing. Anyways, so I don't know. I'm not. Jamie, are you still there? I'm sorry. Jamie, get in on that. I mean, that's really cannabis, but you're. If you don't want to talk about it, you don't have to.
You're muted.
I'm still here. I sent you I put a link for a graph that shows a connection between the pandemic scenarios and crime rates and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think we agree. So yeah, thank you for opining on that. And that's some of the stuff I was getting to here. In the pandemic, I mean, it's funny because. I think this has always been some of this extraordinary kind of political divide. Can I just throw it out there? I think that this is really one of these. During the pandemic, different people had different views on how restricted their lives should be. Right? There was a unilateral. I mean, there's the consensus amongst governors of some methods of lockdown, and it varied from state to state. It's the first go-arounds, right? Yeah. And people were pissed. People disagreed. They made okay. Now, at the same time that this is taking place, you've got this murder that takes place. Wasn't it at that time?
Which one?
The George Floyd.
Yes.
And it set off all these protests and picketing and in public, which was contrary to the rules of the pandemic. Seemed as if they were allowing that to take place for some reason. And it pissed off a lot of people who were pissed off about themselves being restricted, and the arbitrary by which maybe some of the essential workers were made or whatnot, or just the lack of, at times, the impact that the shutdown had on some of these businesses that were not, and it's tragic. I don't know what the answer is, but I'm saying, so I'm saying all this is going on. These are all the things that are like, when you say the pandemic contributed, that's true, but there's so much to the pandemic. I mean, this is one little aspect, and I see it more as like that reality of what I just described is my attempt to understand this person that I'm referring to, who had a conversation with, who was just concerned about the increase in crime, the statistics, and that's all that matters. We're not here to, fix people. We just want to be safe. We don't have time to wait to fix people. Was this thing, and I get that and I understand it, but
economic distress, high unemployment, one thing leads to another, and there's,
right, because the level
of desperate conditions and,
right. So we're just talking about why is it up so much more over the last 2 years? Whatever the rates aren't good. I mean, it's down historically, like it's remained less, or it's gone down every year in the last, 20, 30 years. But then there's this uptick, and we're trying to really define what it is. I mean, I think that we need to, I think that it is less to do with the principles of reform of the criminal justice system. But I do think that the ideas of some of the quote-unquote reformists are ill-advised. I think that...
Well, I mean... Like with,
you got to protect property, business owners' property. You know what I mean? Like that can't be in play.
It's like the first thing they've moved away from.
But it's more than that. It's
the war on drugs lives.
Well, I think there's a parallel. I guess that's my point. Is that the reason the war on drugs failed the way it did was because you have a bunch of government officials and school teachers and police officers and all of these people that participated, and they're living in this world of hyperbole, and they're saying marijuana kills you, things like that. And people look at that, they say, well, that's bullshit. And if you're lying to me about that, I bet you're lying to me about all the other shit too. And unfortunately, what you have with the defund the police movement is the same. Like, should there be reform? Yes, absolutely. Should we adjust what the police spend their money on? Yes, 100%. Should we defund the police? No. And no reasonable person is ever going to say that. So the second you do that, you begin to lose credibility. And then the other things you're fighting for, you end up losing your leverage.
It's not clear why murder rates rose dramatically in 2020. This is from the Pew. Experts have pointed to a variety of potential causes, including the economic and social changes brought on by the corona pandemic and changes in police community relations after the murder of George Floyd in Minnesota last year. But the exact reasons remain unclear. That's all speculative. I don't think you can tie that together. But I do think one of the recurring themes is there's going to be more crime if the police are less involved. And that is a reality of a reaction to this. Like, why would the police want to? I mean, it's a tough, difficult job. I'm not defending bad police behavior, but it's a tough job. And, I think that, the momentum to do some good and change was there because in order for the police to really be good at what they're doing, they need to be wanted. They need to be heroic. They need to be wanting to save and do the right thing. But they've been so mistrained and misguided that the moment, so misguided in the community relations category that, when they don't want to police because they don't feel loved or feel needed or want to even do it because that's their job, like that's an important moment where things can get done. Like that's that's like a shifting of the paradigm to a certain extent because, and I'm saying that if it's a reality that they're doing less policing because they feel that way, right? That's the wrong reaction to this. Like that's polarization. Right, if that's the reality, which it is,
it might be the wrong reaction, but it's the natural one.
Okay, but I'm saying, and to suggest that the reaction to that is defund, this is polarized. I'm saying it's a real learning situation to get in there.
It's a bad title to a reasonable concept.
There's no concept with that title other than defunding. Yeah. You may think it to mean something else. I know that there's a lot of ways people like to say what it is, but nobody knows.
There was a specific approach that was assigned to that title, and it wasn't like just removing all money from police. It had to do with a lot of the other issues that they are involved with inappropriately, like that should be taken over by other professionals. And that's
listen. I'm saying, Damien, that may be true, and the time that it took you to explain that is too long compared to people that are screaming and chanting defund the police. Did you hear what they want to do? And that they want to defund the police. Well, it's not defund the police, and so that's all they hear.
We only mean defund on the shit that they're doing that's bad.
Right. I'm saying, listen.
A title for that approach. I mean,
I'm saying to you that if that's
how about reform the police? That would have been. I think that might have been better.
How about
policing in America needs a complete overhaul?
Yeah. Rethink policing.
There you go. Rethink policing. That's
good. Or this one's a little long, and we could tighten it up a little bit. Like remove qualified immunity.
No one knows what that means.
Yeah, but
they don't.
Because I think if they were subject to lawsuits civilly, I mean, there's a fine line between them being worried about policing and getting sued, right? We understand that,
yes.
And they may not, and you need to have someone not act because they're afraid to. But I do think that it does challenge the challenges the department's better hiring practices, better training practices. It's gonna force them to do that. You're not gonna.
Sure, it does, and it also gives a mechanism for someone to potentially bankrupt their local police department. So
there's still going to be a threshold.
That is true, Jimmy.
I mean, the blade cuts both ways on this one. I mean, I agree. I think qualified immunity is largely bullshit. But I do think that it's there for a reason. And the reason is exactly what you just articulated, is that government officials would be scared to do their job.
I'm not saying that anything would be different about anything else. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if someone is unlawfully arrested, that there should be, or maliciously prosecuted.
Yeah, that has to be the threshold, is the intent. And it has
I'm saying to you that people get arrested all the time.
Yep.
Right? And police officers should do an arrest when they have probable cause. Now, that doesn't mean that, and that means that you have better training. That means you have better clarity in those moments, if you're going to do that. And I'm saying to you that whatever we've got out there on the fucking road right now, without any chance of them being held accountable or the department being held accountable, allows them to be weak in training, to not fill these things in.
You're right.
And tell them that you'll always win because you can't get sued.
You're right.
Or something like that, you know?
You are right.
So act that way. You know, like it's true, like whatever the and you know, everybody else within the department will back them up, you know, to a certain extent, right? I mean, the philosophy of win means do what you think is best and you'll win because we got your back.
But
right?
I mean,
and that's,
but I mean, if everybody was acting in good faith, I think that'd be a great system. And
I'm saying to you this, there's always going to be good people and bad people,
that's
right?
the problem.
And so some of the ways that you eliminate the bad people within the department is you create an environment of hiring of police that there are circumstances different than now. You may remove qualified immunity. Like, let me give you an example. You know, there's the no-fault law allowed you to sue. At some point, there was no limit to the claims you could make for damages. I will remind you of the Brady Bunch episode. Everyone remember the Brady Bunch? There was that famous episode where Mike Brady had rear-ended somebody, and the guy claimed he had a neck brace. They go into court. Yeah. Come on, a young lawyer. You know one remembers this?
I do.
And Mike Brady's got his briefcase. He's not a lawyer, but the guy's complaining, oh, my neck hurts. I got some rinky-dink injury, but I'm making a big deal out of it. And Mike Brady drops the briefcase from the podium. It hits the floor, and the guy goes like this and turns his neck, showing that he doesn't really have an injury, right? Yeah. Wins the case. But that was an example of how the world was regarding traffic accidents. California was the leader in this. They, you know, little rinky-dinky fender benders. You go into court, you complain about some injuries, you squeeze some money out of someone, right? Yeah. And then they changed all that.
You can still do that.
They changed all of that at some point where you had to have what they called was a serious impairment of bodily function. You actually had to have a real injury, like a broken bone, a surgery that was caused because of it. Soft
tissue
was no longer.
That's not true.
There was. I'm going to tell you how it changed, but soft tissue and TMJ was a big injury. You know, my jaw's all fucked up. But they then changed it and allowed for some of those recoveries, Jim, for your PIP benefits, which is your...
No, not only that, but there's they allow for, in the case of the other driver, you know, being negligent, which, you know, simply means they were at fault.
No fault state.
Well, no, but if there was negligence involved, they can sue you for punitive damages or for their pain and suffering. And it's not punitive, it's pain and suffering is what it is.
You still have to have a serious impairment of bodily function.
Yeah, but they can definitely connect the dots between soft tissue injury and serious impairment of bodily function.
Soft tissue doesn't cut anymore. You might be able to get some... Anyways.
You get a couple bucks.
There's been some reform, but I'm saying there was a time when, you know... Anyway, so what I'm saying is, in this situation, we don't want either side to be... What the problem is now is there's an abusive aspect of it, which is that it's difficult to bring a cause of action. I'm not saying this that for the purposes of bankrupting the police department. I'm saying that the threat or reality that a agency may be liable for illegal arrests or a lower threshold than exists now, but something that's more than soft tissue damages, Jim, would... and I'm saying to you this, I'm saying because like the principle of the Fourth Amendment has been recognized as a constitutionally protected right, and if you've been illegally arrested and you claim that in a federal lawsuit and you haven't been convicted, you may be able to get to a jury because it's a recognized as opposed to the other constitutional rights. But with that being said, it has been watered down, and because of partly the war on drugs, but if we step back and said, we really want to respect that, and it's recognized, and before we're going to start arresting people and charging people with crimes, and I would even go as far as to say the charges, like the whole overcharging shit that they do to get you to plead to something else.
Yeah.
There should be some liability attached to that shit. You know what I mean? They shouldn't. The awesome power of the prosecutors is what drives the criminal justice system. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I think y'all need to deal with that at the bar level, my friend.
I'm saying this. I'm saying that the mere idea that there's some. Listen, if someone wants to hire a lawyer and they beat a case or gets thrown on illegal search and seizure, okay? The person that paid the lawyer doesn't get that money back.
Nope.
And the prosecutor that did this goes and does it again tomorrow.
Yep.
And nothing changes. And if it's because an officer lied on the stand,
oh well.
He'll do it. He won't get caught next time.
Yeah.
And there's no checks and balances here. So what I'm saying is that if you really want to, if you're really being genuine about this, there's reform right then and there. And picking cases and counts that they think they can prove at trial with a financial, I mean, I don't know why, there should be a financial disincentive. You know what I mean? Like their idea that they can do whatever the fuck they want and there's no liability whatsoever and they have absolute immunity, right? The charging of someone of some, in the issuing a warrant. Anyways, because the whole thing is built up of this is that you have overcharging, 97% of all cases pleading guilty, which people know that they're not. And some liability there. You shouldn't be able to destroy someone with false allegations, right?
No.
And then turn around and say, I have absolute immunity, so fuck you. But there's something inherently wrong with that. It is actually the least democratic branch of government, equality of government and checks and balances that most unequal of that in our government, I think, right now. What other unchecked power that the prosecutor has exists? I mean, the theory is supposed to be checked by the courts, but the courts really don't have the right to dismiss cases, amend charges, unless the prosecutor does it or there's some legal issue that makes it happen. You know what I mean? So even if a judge thinks that they're doing something wrong, they can't change it. They could bring it to the jury. The judge can't get involved. He's got to follow the law, read the instructions, and they can get convictions all day long over the judges knowing that the guys, you know what I mean? Do you understand what I'm saying? That's an unchecked, unfettered power that just continues to be abused as far as I'm concerned.
You're right.
So you guys agree now we can get some remove qualified immunity? Remove qualified immunity. No, what was the first one that was better? The other one that was better was rethink policing. Rethink policing. Okay. But
short, it's simple.
Eliminate absolute immunity for prosecutors. Go team. No, does that one work or not?
It's good.
Concepts.
Might be a lot of printing on the t-shirt.
Yeah.
Here, I'll tell you this. Here, you guys want to hear something ironic of ironics? We got a couple minutes. It's over here after this. Jamie, you may like this. We've been talking a lot about this in the office because I always, you see some fucking carnage caused by the state and in the policing, and you want to call them out on it. I may be living in a fantasy world, but it's something that I'm keeping an eye on. Keeping an eye on things like Clarence Thomas in a dissent recently writing that how can the federal government even begin to regulate commerce pursuant to the Commerce Clause, which is the reason why cannabis has been illegal federally when it is legal in 37 states. So Clarence Thomas is someone to look out for because he's leading the charge on the legalization from the courts for all purposes. Or he's recognizing the case that has made it illegal, upholding the Cannabis Buyers Club, maybe it's the Angela Wright case. Is he's leading the concepts of revisiting that.
Mm-hmm.
Where was I, Jim? Before we got to that,
You were-
the things we're watching and looking for.
And we were shutting it down.
No, but it was important. Hold on. I mean, Anyways, I maybe I'll remember. Let's do this. Let's everyone get a couple final words in if I can remember. Amanda, what do you got to say for yourself?
Not a whole lot right now, Michael, but I mean, not a whole lot really. I feel like I'm going to pass the torch to Jamie.
Jamie, what do you got to say?
I forgot to bring it up before. You have to spend any time on it, but Charlie Langton in a report on the incident in Grand Rapids goes over some issues he thinks that the police are going to have under these circumstances. And one of them was following a basic protocol that since it was just potentially at highest a misdemeanor of traffic stop, that he should have just let that guy run away.
That's what I would have done. It was stupid.
Well, we talked about it earlier, but I was going to bring up that Charlie Langton is even saying that should have been what he did, and that could be something that is considered.
I don't think that that's something that is readily accepted within the policing community. Maybe it should be. I don't think they should be shooting people, I think, but let me say this. I remember what I wanted to discuss for a second. And watching the news feed or the cases, and spent a lot of time talking about this, and it's a case that we kind of would have needed during the Maxwell Rents. It's remarkable. Let me explain this to you. It's in the state of Tennessee, which is in the 6th Circuit, that same circuit that
Tennessee?
Michigan is. Tennessee Jed is what we were calling it, the Tennessee Jed case. The prosecutor who has absolute immunity, right? They can do whatever they want, and you can't really sue them as long as they're acting like prosecutors. They're not supposed to be involved in the investigation, of course. And the police determined that the store that was allegedly selling CBD products and hemp
CBD
and getting a lot of traffic, the investigators believed in its suspicion, what they thought was suspicion of a crime within the store, that they were in fact not selling hemp CBD products, but items that would be deemed marijuana. And they believe this. And the lead detective got a search warrant setting forth his thoughts and vehemently under oath that there was probable cause of a crime taking place because of his whatever reasons he used to set forth that there was marijuana, not hemp or not CBD, illegal THC. And he took it over to the prosecutor who looked at it, and they don't have to do this, but this prosecutor signed off or proved as to form. Then they took it to a magistrate or judge, and the judge signed it. They executed the search warrant. They seized all the shit in the CBD store, took it back to the police station, probably raided the houses, took forfeiture, beat on everyone, shot some dogs, put all this stuff away into evidence, labeled it, tagged it, and then wrote their reports. And the lead detective of that drug force, meandered over to the prosecutor's office and set forth before the prosecutor a warrant request, that these certain charges be issued. And they issued them. And then, in fact, the lead detective went over to the court and submitted this information to the clerk, and they called out the judge, and the lead detective was called and placed under oath and set forth under oath in what they call the swear-to of what occurred, and ultimately said that we're requesting the following charges be issued regarding marijuana, illegal marijuana, because this was not hemp or CBD. And the judge, based on that under oath statement and the allegations associated with that and the reports that they submitted, issued the complaint, which is also known in the law as an arrest warrant, because now this is entered into the system and a person has an outstanding case. And the next thing that has to happen with that person, if they were to encounter law enforcement, is get arraigned on the charges, okay? So that person is now sought to be arrested, was arrested, was bonded out or not, whatever, but the Fourth Amendment was implicated in both the search warrant and the arrest. And they continued to prosecute this case until it was revealed that they knew at the time of the investigation, they knew when they asserted their so-called probable cause, they knew when they issued the warrant that they thought it was marijuana, not CBD, that they could not prove it, period. And that they could not prove it scientifically, that their lab was not capable of proving the underlying criminal. Now this, the Sixth Circuit, which is good law in other jurisdictions, but precedent here in Michigan, is that that phenomena overcomes prosecutor absolute immunity, so you could levy a civil rights violation under 1983 of a malicious prosecution, and the same against the police officer in the department.
Wow.
All right? This is the Max Lorenz case.
Yeah. Yep. That's exactly.
Which we didn't have a remedy to sue on, but we sued per injunctive relief for the due process violations. But the actual prosecution of that. Also, it doesn't matter. All right. So that's my. Does anyone understand that or have any follow-up questions? Because I was really impassioned. I felt when I was saying it, I expected some kind of better reaction from people. It seemed like you guys didn't care or wasn't feeling my love. Okay. Just kidding. My hypersensitivity, I can pass on that. All right, Jamie, did you get your last word in it? Because I thought I saw a 3D printer walking around in the background like on its own. It may have taken over. Maybe AI.
He looked.
Got old man Sherm hanging out.
Oh yeah. Is that a 3D printed dog? Because that's pretty real.
Three-legged.
Is that the dog that was Hash Bash?
Yeah.
Is he for real three-legged?
Yeah.
Oh.
Sure.
Oh, there you go.
There it is. Okay. Okay, so he has it. It's just non-functional type of thing.
Did he forgive you for the emotional energy that you're spouting off on him during Hash Bash? Just kidding.
Were you getting all emotional about?
No, he had the dog with him at all times. The dog was like,
okay.
Jamie was his like human.
That old lady.
Yeah.
Right.
That's pretty.
Oh yeah, I heard about that. Oh man, stories for the books.
It was funny because if it was any other event, that person would have been more physically accosted. You know what I mean? Like security would have acted faster, and there was a lot of like disdain when it's happened, but it wasn't like violent. You know what I mean?
We'll have to bring
cannajam
Jam security.
No, I'm saying that
security that we had there should never have let her to a podium in the first place.
Yeah. Oh well, it worked out.
Hold on, Jamie. I got to say this because he's not. I don't think.
Cracks.
Hold on.
Got to shut it down.
He's the cutest.
Jimmy, did you have some attendees that got onto your cabbage show the other day, didn't you? Bob Young, was he showing up for? Was he on the show for a little bit?
He come on the show. He was in the comments.
Okay. Well, I wanted to give him a shout out. I saw him at the Hash Bash. I didn't get a chance to say hello. And he listens to Planet Green Trees, and I missed the moment to say hello to me. And it was weird because there was a guy that was like waving at me, and I didn't know if it was me or somebody. He had a couple of those going on out there. There's a lot of but still,
Man, Bob Young watches like most of the.
He is. He's a good people, and I wanted to make sure that he should call in and he listens to all me. He's got an opinion. Let me next week, Bob Young, Planet Green Trees, episode 559, the Bob Young Show.
559.
There was a Supreme Court justice named Bob Young.
Yeah.
Remember? Junior, maybe.
Yeah.
He had a bow tie. Different guy.
With the Judy at that campaign years ago, right?
He's the one that said to the Oakland County prosecutor, You guys have frequent flyer
flyers.
miles on the marijuana issues, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How
He was Chief
embarrassing.
Justice for
He was. What's that?
I said how embarrassing for them.
It was. All right, so I think everyone have enough because we could go on. Jamie, look at those guitars back there. Don't those look nice? Look at those. They're 3D printed.
We 3D printed them.
Not that one. It's this one over here.
Yeah. And with that, Dan,
You know what happened? You know what happened? It's a civil infraction to do a B&E at a music center. So we went over to Guitar Center, kicked in some doors. We're waiting to get a ticket in the mail. Just kidding. It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. That's a wrap. We will see everybody next week. Be safe, and thanks for listening. See you later.
Guys.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
When you're charged with a crime, you need a real attorney. And here's just a few reasons why. The police, the courts, the labs, the drug tests, probation, the judges, the jails, the prisons, and the entire system is just one big machine. They have one objective. Take your freedom, take your possessions, take your money, take your children, control your life, and destroy your future. You only get one chance to hire the right attorney. One that will stay in your corner. One that will fight for your rights. One that will fight for your freedom. Choose an attorney that's experienced in fighting the justice machine. Attorney Michael Komorn. Knockout victories one case at a time. Komorn Law. Google it. komornlaw.com.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. MichiganMedicalMarijuana.org.
Hi, I'm attorney Michael Komorn of Komorn Law, PLC, and you are watching Planet Green Trees.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today. michiganmedicalmarijuana.org.
Before you plead, call me, attorney Michael Komorn.
An important and historical farm crop in American agriculture has returned after having been classified as a controlled substance and illegal. On December 20th, 2018, the President signed the Farm Bill, also known as the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, into law. The signing of the act was great news for the hemp industry, which amended the definition of marijuana in the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Hemp is now defined as the plant, Cannabis sativa L, and any part of the plant, growing or not, with less than 0.3% THC concentration on a dry basis. The plant itself is no longer a controlled substance. Hemp is one of the most versatile plants on earth. From clothing, fiber, paper, building materials, hempcrete, biofuels, CBD, and medical uses, it has been a part of America's industry for over 200 years. Even the United States Constitution was drafted on hemp paper. The time is now. If you're thinking of getting in the farming or processing of hemp, contact our global experts, legal, and consultation teams to make sure that you're on the right road when you venture into the new hemp industrial revolution. Michigan Hemp Industries has been a leader and advocate for the return of the hemp industry, so come be a part of the new revolution in agriculture in Michigan.
I am Earl from G3 Cannabis Therapy Network, and you are watching Planet Green Trees, the original and #1 podcast in Michigan for all things cannabis and legal news.